एक रोज़ अपनी रूह से पूछा कि दिल्ली क्या है, तो जवाब में कह गई कि दुनिया मानो जिस्म और दिल्ली उसकी जान।
Today we have Eric Chopra with us, someone who is an author, historian and a podcaster, and also has written an amazing book called Ghosted. This is going to be one conversation that is going to delve into history.
One thing I've realized is that history is a repository of stories, and you can perform a story in any way as long as it's done with nuance and respect and sensitivity.
So, what is it with the Mehrauli area?
First is Mehrauli, the name, right? Mehrauli, which is, it is blessed by the saints. It has a wali. And what people, I think, don't realize is that part of our city is actually Purani Dilli.
You don't talk about later in the book as well, where you've got the Ashoka pillars and the iron pillars.
We are still trying to figure out where exactly did this iron pillar come from, but we do know that we have inscriptions going back to the age of the Guptas. But there's a very interesting story about Delhi getting its name from the iron pillar.
I always wondered how, something like Lodi Garden is so popular, but Jamali-Kamali's, tomb or the area around is not.
Jamali-Kamali's monument is one of the most stunning secrets of the city. It's a gem-like tomb, and the figure of Jamali is so interesting, right? Because this is a man who straddled the eras of the Lodis and the Mughals.
And Khooni Darwaza.
Its name, Khooni Darwaza, right? It already strikes you. You wonder, why is it so bloody?
Welcome back to Let's Chat with GB. Today we have Eric Chopra with us, someone who is an author, historian and a podcaster, and also has written an amazing book called Ghosted. This is going to be one conversation that is going to delve into history. It's going to delve into, some of the background in terms of how Ghosted was actually created. And believer or non-believer, either ways, you are going to love this one. Eric, welcome to Let's Chat with GB.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
So we're going to go back to, where did this love for history really all begin? Because you had started something called Itihaasology, I think in 2019.
Yes.
2019. So talking about 6 years ago. But where did the love for history actually all begin?
It was a surprise, and it continues to be a surprise to me till today that I'm doing what I'm doing. 2019 was the year when I graduated from school. And up until then, I had no clue what I was going to do.
Okay.
I wasn't a studious kid by any imagination. And sometimes when I tell this to people now, they think I'm trying to get a documentary made on me where, I had this non-academic childhood and suddenly I wrote a book. But it truly is, I wasn't studying. I was doing everything else though. Editorial duties, theater, being dramatic on stage, off stage, that was my thing.
Right.
However, in 12th grade, I remember just a week before my board examinations, my teacher speaking with me, my history teacher speaking with me about what is it that I plan to do. Until then, the belief was that because I read books being Diary of a Wimpy Kid, that I could do English literature, I could do English honors.
Yep.
So I said, I'll do English honors. And she said, it's not as easy as you imagine it to be. So she said, why don't you study history, but do it backwards? Go from, and in our 12th grade at that point, it was literally from the Harappan civilization, 2600 BCE, all the way to the 1940s, 50s, with the making of the constitution. She said, start from the constitution. And I found it a bit bizarre. Why would you go backwards? But I remember coming across the chapter on the constitution. I remember reading a speech by Nehru in which there was this very clear idea that if you want to build a future for any country, for anything actually, you have to look at the past. That's what he said when he said, look at the French Revolution, look at the founding fathers. And the paving of this way had to be by looking backward. And I thought that's fascinating, that you have to go back and see back.
Right.
And that's when I decided that perhaps this could work for me. I went for my exam. I came back home. I told my dad, it's no longer going to be English honors. It will be history. And it was him who suggested, why don't you also take your passion outside of the classroom, do something on social media.
Right.
And in that moment, it was Itihaasology. And that's how it came to be.
Fantastic. And tell me about your dad and the family backgrounds. Your dad is a serving army Air Force
Air Force
officer,
officer.
right?
Yes.
Right. And of course, you as a child you would have traveled immensely across
Yes.
many cities. Any memories from back then as well?
Yes, one of the things that I think has stayed with me is that movement. And this is something that I think now shows in the work that we do at Itihaasology or with history. I think when you move from city to city and you meet people and you come across languages and you come across the spirit of diversity, you grow up in a very different way. You don't see silos in culture and in it is perhaps, and it's a privilege for me to have been able to do this, because in every city that I went to, I have come back with a bouquet of ideas that are unique to that place. But all of them have come together and have formed me the way I am today. Be it Agra and my first glimpse of monuments there, when I had no clue that I would end up reading about them with such depth years later.
Right.
Be it my years in Nagpur, which was, according to me, a childhood in Nagpur was very unique, and I have never been to a city like that after, all the very innocent years I spent in Chandigarh, which was and continues to be a city of my heart. After Delhi, if there's a city that I would go to, it is Chandigarh. So I've grown up with various ideas, and that traveling and just being exposed to different schools, that was a privilege. But at the same time, I think it also equipped me with knowing that everything is temporary.
Right.
You would go into a city knowing 3 years, 2 years, and that's it.
Yeah.
And you would believe as a child that things will last. There will be a friendship that lasts a lifetime, or a relationship that will never fade, no matter the distance. Sometimes it's difficult because it does happen, and you go back to these cities with that nostalgia. So it's bittersweet, but in the larger way of looking at how my life's turned out to be, it has been a privilege to be able to travel with dad and mom.
Yeah, I love that. I love that perspective, because when you talk to a Delhi city kid or someone who's been in a school all through, and they KG to class 12, they were at the same place, and you tell them you're moving every 2 years or 3 years, like they find it, but didn't your parents really feel that you should have built those bonds and all of that?
Yeah.
But somehow, I mean, again, knowing so many friends who had parents who were in the services, either Army, Air Force, Navy, or even the IS, it's part of life. And
Exactly.
I love how you actually put that as well. And I changed many schools. I was in fact sent to different schools for different reasons, one for health reasons, one for academic reasons. But I think in the end it plays out well, and you have good bonds that you build across all of those places eventually.
Exactly. Yeah.
So history, and we've talking about a common friend, which is Sandeep Onithan. He's, again, I think, a big history buff, and
Yes.
he was on this podcast as well once, and he would always talk about the lessons that we can learn from history, and of course how history just keeps repeating itself. Are you seeing that in the world today, where it just seems like everything is gone back to the way they were at the turn of the century, and we're kind of moving backwards, at least politically? What are your thoughts on that?
I think I look at history repeats in a very different way, because patterns don't fade. You will eventually see, and if you're a historian or you look at the world through a historical perspective, you do sometimes sit back and say, I've seen this happen before. Maybe not through your eyes, but of course through the books that we read or the museums we go to.
Right.
I do think that we tend to sometimes believe that the more historic it is, the more backward it is. And I think sometimes I tell people that, people in ancient India weren't waking up and saying, oh, what a beautiful day in ancient India today. For them, it was the contemporary period that they were in. It was, they were the moderns of their own time.
Yeah.
So I'm sometimes afraid of saying that ideas that we associate perhaps with conservative values, or very or a black and white way of looking at life, comes from the past. Yes, for sure, there were episodes in history that, if our sensibilities won't match. I mean, I was just looking at this strange history of the Bezoar stone, which is formed in a stomach of an animal, because it's material that is not, it can't be digested.
Okay.
This stone was medicine for the Middle Ages. It was exchanged as a diplomatic gift. It became a prized possession. The Mughals had it. The Queen Elizabeth I wore it in her crown. You can't imagine now, today, taking out a stone from the stomach of an animal and encasing it in gold and using it as medicine.
Right.
So our values and our ideas definitely change. But I think for a lot that's happening currently also socio-politically, yes, there are patterns that you can find in history, but also a lot of it is unique to its own time.
Right.
And in that way, we also have to look at it in sometimes the scrutiny that it deserves through a contemporary lens, because the context in which it is happening today, where if I look at the intersection of history and politics, you would see history constantly being politicized for very certain narratives to
All
be
the genders.
pushed.
Yeah,
It's either exoticized or romanticized or is
Right.
made into a battlefield.
Right.
So this idea of using history is a very old one. You see emperors throughout time also changing history or rewriting it,
Right.
but each time rewrites it in its own way. So we are seeing that happen now too.
Yeah. Oh, totally agree. And I love how you mentioned, I think it was perhaps in one of your TEDx talks where you spoke about the fact is when people think history, they think about, going back 40, 50, 60 years. But history is something that happened, maybe even a few minutes ago. Like
Yes.
anything that's, just going back even a few seconds in time is actually history. And I loved, that perspective as well. So I have had, the fortune to read your book, and it's first up, really well, written. And I thought
Thank
the
you.
concept was amazing. As soon as the team said that, of course, they had a relationship, that went back with you,
Yes.
in time, and then of course, the concept. And I thought ghosts is just, or such a fascinating, topic and a subject. So where did the thought, come across for actually writing this particular book?
So I have been doing heritage walks for a very long time in Delhi, across monuments. And one of the things that I would constantly be asked by people, apart from questions about who made this monument, who broke this part, which century, and very nuanced questions too.
Yeah.
I would also always be asked if the monument that we are at is haunted. And the thing is, my love for horror predates my love for history. I grew up alongside Diary of a Wimpy Kids. I grew up on an appetite of Goosebumps and the Addams Family. And I remember my first whiff of American Horror Story and 13B and Fear Files. No matter how morbid they and hilarious they were,
Sure.
they still bit me. They bit the horror lover in me.
Right.
And my love for Delhi, apart from a historian's perspective, also comes from my grandfather, who, brought me close to stories of Delhi from a very emotional perspective. So whenever people would tell me or ask me about the ghosts of Delhi, I couldn't help but be at the intersection of looking at the city with that childlike innocence and that charm, the otherworldly charm, and also the horror lover in me, but also through a historian, because it became important for me. In the beginning, it was questions. Then I began researching, and I would search up haunted places in Delhi. If till today you search haunted places anywhere in the world,
Right.
it would be monuments, most of them.
Agreed.
So you would start to wonder, why is history so haunted?
Yep.
That was my first question.
Yep.
And then I began looking at the horrors that sort of exist in Delhi. We know William long ago wrote his book, City of Jinns,
Correct.
which solidified that Jinn have so much love for this place that they won't ever let it die. So they call Delhi a city of cities, but they also we see habitually Delhi returns and revives. Right? It will fade away.
Yeah.
But throughout centuries, we have seen, even when Muhammad bin Tughlaq decides to move the capital from Delhi to Daulatabad,
Right.
it comes back with his successor, Firoz Shah, and he realizes what a mistake he made.
Yeah.
So Delhi has that quality. But when I began my research, I started to realize that each of these horrors have a reason to be. So of course, my way of looking at it was that if you tell me there's a Jinn at a certain monument, or a witch at another one, or, a phantom, a British phantom, a headless one at another one, I won't treat your story as a lesser story.
Right.
I believe if somebody comes to me with a story,
Yeah.
They are trusting me with it. And my responsibility as a listener is to respect it and to say, your story is safe with me.
Right.
But I also need to look at how the story fits into my perspective as a historian. And I think that's what I tried doing here.
Love it. And of course, while the book covers, a lot of, places around the NCR, so to speak, have you ever actually gone beyond and done walks that went to other, cities, locations, even states or countries?
I think I would be able to do that once the ghosted fever sort of fades off, because I really am keen on, and we've started to get messages actually from
Right.
people who say, I'm glad that you've looked at Delhi, but you must come to Bombay and you must see. And Kolkata, I got a lot of messages from readers in Kolkata who say that,
Right.
and Bengal is obviously known for its ghosts. And we have recently seen a surge of literature on ghosts from Bengal, and it's been an old time story.
Right.
So a lot of havelis and monuments across the city, across the country seem to be haunted. But I think once I am done not only with Ghosted, but also looking at some other monuments, because one of the questions that I got frequently after I got this book out
Right.
was, but you haven't looked at Agra Sen Ki Bauli
Sure.
or Bhuli Bhatiyari Ka Mahal. Are they not haunted enough?
Mm.
And I said, no, I mean, I'm sure their ghosts are also equally scary or interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
But right now, what I wanted to do was, I wanted to tell the history of Delhi,
Right.
its entirety, from
Yeah.
Mehrauli and the formation of, Aravalis are a
Correct.
currently very hotly debated topic. But from the Aravalis and Mehrauli, all the way to making New Delhi. And why do
Right.
we call New Delhi and Old Delhi, Old Delhi? That's what I wanted to do. So
Yeah.
once I think I do this, I'll go to other cities.
Yeah. No, I love that, and of course, you heard it here first. There is a sequel, perhaps, on the cards as well, which would make sense because, as you rightly said, there is just so many places,
There are many ghosts.
that would warrant this
Yeah.
kind of conversation. And once you're done with India, you can even take it global because I'm sure there'll be like so much that'll be happening out of
Oh,
Scotland.
absolutely.
or
London
UK.
is supposed to be one of the most haunted cities too.
places.
So
In
yes.
fact, just yesterday, someone was over and they were here from the US, and I was telling them about the book and
Hmm.
the podcast, and like, oh, but then you must check out Savannah, Georgia, because they're like, that is one place where
Yes.
it's truly spooky.
Exactly.
So I'm sure
Yes.
there'll be many
Yes.
such instances. Love that. So what is it with the Mehrauli area? Because there is, I mean, you talk about it in the book as well that there's a lot of mysticism. We talk about Jamali, in the book as well, and the Sufi
Yes.
movement. I'm just thinking, coming down to even modern day Mehrauli, where that is where all the temples are. That's
Yes.
where Gurujis are still popping up, and so all of that. So what is it with that area? Is it something that is it like also something geographically that has a significance?
Yes, first is Mehrauli, the name, right? Mehrewali, which it is blessed by the saints. It has a wali. And what people, I think, don't realize is that part of our city is actually Purani Dilli in
Right.
antiquity-wise.
Of course.
Shahjahanabad is called Old Delhi and Chandni Chowk is called Old Delhi because when the British were building New Delhi, they said, well, the previous one should just become Old Delhi. But
Right.
in antiquity and chronology, New Delhi and Old Delhi are closest to each other in
Right,
time, whereas Mehrauli goes so far back. Mehrauli, of course, any Delhi wala or a traveler here would tell you that one is you can't escape the ancestral gaze of the Qutub Minar. It literally towers above you in that entire area. Secondly, you would always notice that one side is forested. The other side are all these high fashion stores, boutiques, the best of restaurants,
Right.
all of them offering the view to this Qutub Minar.
Of course.
And then you would, as you rightly pointed out, it is a place of so many religious centers and you have ancient places, right? So you
Right.
have in the same little hilly area the Dargah of Qutub Sahib, and then you also have Yogmaya temple,
Yeah.
and you have a church, you have a Gurdwara, literally in that intersection. You
Right.
can walk from one to another. And in the backyard of Qutub Minar is where this park lies, Mehrauli Archaeological Park. Now, geographically speaking, this park became a park in the 90s, right? It wasn't supposed to be a collection of monuments.
Right.
In the time that they were built by each patron because that was the sheher.
Yeah.
They weren't thinking of boundaries in the way we think of them today, right? When Jamali made his tomb and his mosque in the late 1520s,
Right.
it was because that's the only sheher he knew of. That was the sheher.
Yeah.
At that time, the headquarters had moved to Agra. but he was a Delhi wala, so he was building everything over here. And I think both the idea that it's hilly, which was the reason why you have the Tomars, the Chauhans, the Sultans coming towards Delhi in the beginning. It provided natural defense, that hilly area. Apart from that, you will notice that till today, because of its location, not the Qutub Minar. Qutub Minar is one of the most visited monuments in the world. But its backyard, the park, at least for many years, and recently parts of it have been renovated and restored. But up until 2023, it was frequented by people, but it was always spoken about in this mysterious way. I mean, I remember one of the first times, and I talk about it in the book, when I do go to Jamali-Kamali, there are foolwalas sitting outside and they tell me to tie my hair and they tell me to take off my perfume. And I said, but why? And he said, well, because if you go inside, the jinn will come and sit in your hair, or they will marry you, or they will slap you. I said, that's a very interesting dichotomy to be at. Everybody speaks about Mehrauli in that way. And I think, yes, antiquity, geography, and how we treat history. It's bizarre to me that Qutub Minar, which is one of the oldest monuments of the city, is not haunted enough because of how popular it is. And it's ticketed, so ghosts possibly can't enter inside. But there are so many gory histories associated with it. We know why it's locked because of the stampede that happened inside. We know of suicides that have happened from top of it, Eugene Ruspuva. But its backyard is what is haunted. Why? Because it's always kept locked and people don't visit it as much. And it's one of those secrets of Delhi. So there's lots of things at play.
Yeah, right. I think in fact, even remember, an instance of 1981, was it, when the stampede happened?
I think it was
the school kids around that time.
Yes.
Because I was just in, perhaps 5 years old, but supposed to do a school trip, which obviously never happened.
Yes.
Because of that. And you do talk about later in the book as well, where you've got the Ashoka pillars and the iron pillars, and a lot of people would come to that, to ask for wishes to be granted, for example. But most of these have now been cordoned off, right?
Yes, they have been.
Because the funny part is, and I was thinking about it when I was reading the book, that I think I was again maybe 6, 7, 8, somewhere on that age. And I remember going to Qutub Minar, and the iron pillar was there, and you had access to it.
Yes.
And the rumor was, or the legend was, that if you could get your hands around it and you could ask for a wish, it would actually be granted.
Yes.
All right. And I didn't know how it happened, but I think I did go there. And my dad was a smoker at the time. He was smoking like a lot.
Right.
And I remember going to that pillar, getting my hands around it. I didn't know how I did it since I was 7. And I said, I wish he'd stop smoking. And funnily enough, a few months later, he gets jaundice and he never smokes again.
Oh, God. Wow.
And I'm like, that's a cool pillar to get
to get your things around.
Except that I don't think you can have access to it. Maybe
No,
you need
you don't.
contacts in the ASI to, get them to open it up for you.
I know. So the interesting thing about that pillar is that, so it has not rusted, right? It's more than 1,000 years old.
Right.
It's made. And, sometimes when I take people on heritage walks there and they ask me to explain why it's not, I said that if I could explain, I would have not taken history. So I'm going to say some words to you about iron and so on and so forth.
Right.
But it hasn't. It's been rust free pretty much.
Yeah.
So, and the story was that you could, if you hug it backwards, right?
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what you did. But unfortunately, because of the hugging, it started to get those marks on it. So that's why I think they cordoned it off.
Right.
But I think that iron pillar is this is not the only mystical story associated with it. So one is, we are still trying to figure out where exactly did this iron pillar come from. But we do know that we have inscriptions going back to the age of the Guptas. But there's a very interesting story about Delhi getting its name from the iron pillar.
Really?
So the Tomars, Anangpal Tomar, who is one of the first kings to have established dominion in Delhi. It's sometime in the medieval period, a legend emerged that beneath this iron pillar is Vasuki, the king of serpents. And on top of Vasuki is this pillar, and it rests on his head. And Anangpal was told by, a sage that as long as the pillar remains, your rule will remain. because it's resting on the head of a very powerful serpent.
Right.
And Anangpal got curious and he said, well, I want to see Vasuki. So he gets his people together and he says, go ahead and remove the iron pillar. I want to see if Vasuki actually comes out from the ground. And so they remove the pillar and Vasuki's head comes off and it's filled with blood and it's flowing and he's killed Vasuki. And he's panicked. So he says, bring this down. So it comes down, but never again does it remain stable.
Right.
So his rule also comes to an end because the pillar now is dhila. And that dhila slowly becomes dhili. And from that dhiliness, we get the name Delhi. So that pillar has had a lot of mystical, otherworldly stories and superpowers attributed to it.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well, I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's a cool fact. And they need to pull some strings to make a few more wishes.
I know, to get it just for a special occasion.
And a lot of people would actually make the mistake of, even thinking it's one of Ashoka's pillars.
Yes.
But Ashoka's pillars are actually quite different. And
Very
I think one
different.
of them is there at Firoz Shah
Firoz Shah Kotla.
but not this one.
Not this one. No. This pillar is fresher. Ashokan pillars go back 2,000 years.
Right.
And very interestingly, both of them were brought to Delhi by Sultan Firoz Shah Tughlaq in the 14th century.
Right.
So these are 2,000-year-old pillars. Again, interestingly, Ashoka, when he started to spread his message of Dhamma, right? It was his own. This was very uniquely him. And we know that famed story of post-Kalinga and, embracing Dhamma. Ashoka was unique in the way that he orchestrated a method in ancient India, in a time when you don't have mass communication the way you do today, and you don't have this method of spreading your message. He decided to use pillars and rocks as a way of communicating his message to his empire. Okay. So his same message, his edicts would be replicated in different parts.
Got it.
And they were spread all across, right? So depending on which region was he speaking in, he would also tweak his language a bit.
Right.
Now, 2,000 years ago, this happens. In the 14th century, Firoz Shah Tughlaq, this sultan who's following the legacy of a predecessor who moved the capital of Delhi, and it's feeling like
there's a whole bunch of
exactly currency is gone. It's like, now what do I do? And Firoz Shah Tughlaq has anyway been seen as this emperor, as the sultan who was more keen on architecture and things more poetic and artistic than administrative and economic. He's on his tours and he's in Ambala and he's in Meerut and he sees Ashoka's pillars. He doesn't know what they say because, Brahmi Kharushti at that time, they haven't been deciphered. They only get deciphered in the 19th century. So he's looking at them and he says, well, they're very pretty. And so his court chroniclers are telling him, much like the story of the iron pillar, his court chroniclers say to him that, this pillar says that only you can take it out from here and bring it to your empire. Obviously, kings would believe it because, they would gush over these things. Actually, what the pillar was saying were the edicts of Ashoka, right? Be good and do good and all of that. So he gets them removed. He brings them to Delhi. One of them he puts in Firoz Shah Kotla. Now, Firoz Shah Kotla, to our listeners, is not the stadium. That's now the Arun Jaitley Stadium. Arun Jaitley Stadium was named after Firoz Shah Kotla, which was his fortress. The cities had moved from Mehrauli towards this side now because of the Yamuna. The population had expanded. You needed something like the Yamuna to now also sustain your population. And sustain them. So he decides to get this pillar. One he puts in his fortress on top of it. The other he puts on the northern ridge of Delhi, right? Where Delhi University is, that north campus. This pillar today, however, in Firoz Shah Kotla, the one you're talking about, is neither remembered for Firoz Shah Tughlaq, nor is it remembered for Ashoka. It's become the chief of the Jinn saints. It's called the Latal Baba. And people pray to it. It's stopped now. You can't light candles or bring in agarbattis. But people write letters to it. They're gile shikwe. And Latal Baba tells you which jinn, and just for basic knowledge, jinn are entities made of smokeless fire, and they seem to inhabit most of Delhi. And this Ashokan pillar now, Latal Baba tells people who go with their gile shikwe which jinn you should go to for your problem to be solved. Nanne Miya, Chote Miya, Bade Miya, all of whom live in Firoz Shah Kotla. And once you leave Firoz Shah Kotla, each evening, the jinn have a darbar called the Darbar-e-Jinn, where they sit over your problems and they solve it.
That's insane. And how many jinns are there in the Firoz Shah Kotla area?
Well, count, if you go inside Firoz Shah Kotla, there are dedicated, so there are a lot of arches and niches.
Right.
So you can tell Nanne Miya's niche, which is when you go inside and there's a small alcove in the beginning and people stick coins on it. You see letters over there too. And then the other recognizable one is, of course, Latal Baba, which is the pillar itself.
Right.
In front, parallel to the pillar, is the Jami Masjid that Firoz Shah Tughlaq built on the top floor.
Right.
On the ground floor, there are again arches, a lot of cells. At one point, you could enter them. Now they're all locked.
Right.
So people choose an arch to sit outside of. And they stand in line sometimes. On Thursdays, it's most popular.
Right.
That's the bright night.
Yeah.
And interestingly, when I was talking to Suhail Ashmiji about what happens in Firoz Shah Kotla, he says that for the first time he's seen the same practices you see in a Sufi dargah happening over here. Because when you go to a dargah, you tie a knot and say that you are beholden to me. Now I've shared my gile shikwe with you. When my problem gets solved, I'll come back and I'll untie the knot.
Yeah.
They do the same thing at Firoz Shah Kotla. They tie a jinn and they say, this is my problem. And many people, much like your Iron Pillar story, and they also have similar problems. They come with very personal problems.
Right.
And smoking and alcoholism is one of them. It is something that, because when you lose any sort of hope, we turn to sources that we believe in, be it God, be it Sufis, be it ghosts. And I think it's the same thing here too.
Yeah. Wow. And jinns are supposed to be better behaved, right? Because you would have other extremes where you have like the poltergeist and all of that kind of stuff. So classification, okay, and just would love to know again from the perspective, because you have so much depth in the subject. What are the different classifications of ghosts and spirits?
So jinn decide how they want to be. Much like us, they get the choice, because it is believed that they will also equally be judged, and whenever the world ends.
Right.
And Firoz Shah Kotla, according to our oral histories of Delhi, are supposed to be the good jinn. Jamali-Kamali is supposed to be a place for jinn who are not good and they come out and slap you, right? That's the story that goes. However, in other parts of the city, the other monuments that I talk about, you have ghosts there. So jinn are not ghosts, right? Because they were created at the same time of creation. Right. If humans are made of clay, they're made of smokeless fire.
Right.
Ghosts, of course, as we know, we've been told, ghosts come post-death, right? It's either tormented souls, or it is somebody who is seeking vengeance, or it is somebody who has unfinished business. When I looked at the ghosts of Delhi, I realized that a lot of ghosts don't really have much business being here, so I do not know why they exist. Like the ghosts of Dara Shikoh and Abdurrahim Khani Khana's sons at Khooni Darwaza. And then if you go to Malcha Mahal, of course, I think we'll just soon touch on that story. Those are very different type of ghosts. Right, those are very recent ghosts of a woman and a family who lived in this monument. Correct. And that's a very sad story too, located in partition. And then you have colonial ghosts. You have a lot of British phantoms in Delhi because of 1857, when the uprising, the first, what we call the first war of independence, mutiny, the uprising. Bahadur Shah Zafar, the last Mughal emperor, is exiled, and officially the Queen of England presides over India, and we come under company, we end company rule.
Right.
So you see that area with a lot of Gothic architecture in the northern ridge, where Kashmiri Gate, where a lot of British phantoms, one of them is, and somehow, for some reason, the British ghosts of Delhi are all headless. Maybe it comes from that horse rider. But it's very funny because the Mutiny Memorial Sarkata is a headless British phantom, but he asks you for a cigarette. So you really wonder, how does he smoke if he does not have a head? So yeah, those are the different classifications.
So I did go to a school that was founded by someone who was in fact, died in the mutiny, and this is Henry Lawrence, and he founded Sanaa in 1847.
Yes.
And Sanaa has sections that have been built on a graveyard, including Peastead, which is now also called, based on a movie that's going to now also be coming on a character, which is Kinspal, right? And in Sanaa, we're told all the time that you don't get out at a certain time. Don't never go towards the girls' dorms because there will be a headless jockeydaar.
Yeah.
So I kind of get this
The headless
aspect,
trope.
as well. And sometimes they would say, so Henry Lawrence's wife was Honoria Lawrence, and they're like, her ghost is also patrolling those. I think it's also a way to keep the guys out of the girls' dorms and those areas. So there's also perhaps some legend there. I don't know if anyone ever saw anything
headless jockeydaar. Yeah.
But yeah, those stories are always there, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So if you come back to the first chapter, and by the way, fascinating book, because for everyone who's watching this, I was sitting with my highlighter and I was doing a whole bunch of points. And the cool part is, and of course, I would also have used flags and all of that, but then I didn't have the flags with me. But I just loved how you also married, stories of history and real history, which has kind of been married in there, like right from instances where you're talking about Babur and the Babarnama and all the instances around that, and there is references to the Tughlaq dynasty and Balban, of course, and all of that. So I think very, very fascinating read. So history is your thing. I think definitely something that you need to get your copy of Ghosted for sure. But when you talk about Jamali, and I love how when Jamali-Kamali, like you rightly said, no one had even heard of it. I remember going there first, maybe in the mid 90s for a picnic.
Yes.
It was a nice place. And then I always wondered how, something like Lodi Garden is so popular.
Yeah.
But Jamali-Kamali's, tomb or the area around is not. And and you write in the book as well that it's a great place for clandestine lovers. Yeah. So, people just looking to get away and, get some peace and quiet. We're not really the most visited. But talking about Kamali, you said quite a mystery, right? There's some, references that said Kamali never existed. Some would say he was, a lover. Some had actually said that he was a star pupil.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on Jamali and Kamali, basically?
Yeah. So first is, you're right. This story of the picnic at Jamali-Kamali, I've heard from so many people. Like, anytime I've spoken to someone whose childhood in the 90s, 80s, 70s, around that time, especially post this area becoming a park,
right.
I hear that for a very long time, a lot of school picnics happened here, a lot of, Sunday afternoons right. under more breathable air, right. Used to be spent here. And for me, this was an anomaly. Now, again, because one is, I have grown up not in Delhi, even though I'm a Delhi wala.
Right.
And my childhood wasn't spent in Delhi. Right. So I haven't really grown up with these monuments that I pretty much made my haunt in the last few years. So I would always hear these stories with a sense of, envy, because you go to the monument now and restrictions are immense. The tomb is always kept locked.
Right.
And you're always told of a mythical figure who will grant permission to you to go inside and see it. They always say, go to the Qutub Minar. And I said, but what do I do? I'll go there and ask who? Who do I need to ask? Right. Now, of course, there is a process to get it done and you get in touch with the Archaeological Survey of India. But I still think for a monument that is so stunning, Jamali-Kamali's monument is one of the most stunning secrets of the city. It's a gem-like tomb. And the figure of Jamali is so interesting, right? Because this is a man who straddled the eras of the Lodhis and the Mughals. He was besties with Sikandar Lodhi, who made him the poet laureate, who went to him with his own poems and used to say, have I written a good poem? Would you judge me? And Jamali used to give his advice. Jamali was a diplomat, a globetrotter. He loved aesthetics. He was a Sufi. Right. And he was a very trusted emissary.
Yeah.
But court politics led him to fall out of the Lodhi Sultanate. Right. And when you have Ibrahim come into the picture, Ibrahim Lodi does not trust Jamali. Jamali realizes it, takes a back seat. But lucky for him, winds were changing and they were bringing with them Babur.
Right.
And, Jamali perhaps had an inkling that the Lodhis would soon come to an end and it
Right.
would be a new dynasty.
Yeah.
So at that battle of Panipat, where Ibrahim is defeated by Babur, Jamali writes a laudatory poem because a poet can only sway you with poetry.
Right.
And Babur makes him a part of his trope. Now, in the late 1520s, when Babur is throwing this party in Agra, and Jamali is a part of this party.
Right.
We know that from the Baburnama.
Right.
I think it's that time when Jamali starts thinking about death, because that's when he comes back to Delhi and commissions the work on his mosque and his tomb in Mehrauli.
Right.
And when Humayun, Babur's son, comes into the picture, Humayun has, as you know, not only history buffs, but it's a story that we all know. Humayun fell off the stairs and passed away, and he had a very tumultuous reign. He literally got the throne, then lost it, then got it back, but then died. So in that tumultuous reign, at one point he had to go to Gujarat, and Jamali was sent with him. It's in Gujarat where Jamali dies. Imagine the pain on somebody's heart who wanted to be in Delhi, not knowing that he would be buried there.
Right.
In his last moments, he would have thought, I'm dying in Gujarat and my sheher is away from me.
Correct.
But in a rare act, this Sufi poet diplomat's body is brought back from Gujarat and buried in the tomb that he commissioned from himself.
And that would have been a long trip back in the day.
That would have been a long trip and a rare trip for somebody who's not an emperor.
Right.
And then a few years later, another grave comes next to him, another marble grave, who we start calling Kamali, much like Jantar Mantar and those things that come out of a town.
Right.
Now, historically, yes, it's been very difficult to know who Kamali is. In true fashion of historians, they would say they were best friends or they were roommates or whatever.
Right.
Others have, of course, said that he was a star pupil, another poet. We've also had a sense of understanding that maybe Kamali could be all of it, because, and Madhavi Menon actually is the one who actually looked at this for the first time, that why must this boundary be created? Why can't a poet also be a lover? So as a historian, it became important for me to say that because our sources are very less, I do not want to confirm any identity.
Yep.
However, it was bugging me that it's so difficult for us to accept love, especially in times when, it seems like love is becoming more unpopular and it is easier to think of hate and it is easier to think of boundaries and binaries. So Kamali possibly being a lover was something that was explored by a range of people beyond the scholarly field, right? You have Sunil Gupta doing his photographs. You have Karan Turani doing an entire menswear collection on Jamali-Kamali. You have Naz Foundation, a lot of queer walks happening over here. And it carved a space. So I think in many ways, Jamali-Kamali for me became a space of looking at a history from various strands. Also, if you noticed, much like Taj Mahal, Shah Jahan's grave is the only thing that breaks the symmetry of his own monument, because he was not supposed to be buried there.
Right. It's an afterthought.
It's an after, exactly, after he passes away. In Jamali-Kamali's beautiful symmetrical grave, the only thing breaking the symmetry is Kamali, because I think love can't be in such rigid boundaries and symmetries.
Interesting. Yeah. I get that. And we spoke about Firoz Shah Tughlaq. We spoke about Firoz Shah, the area as well. In the book also you have reference to memorials around Delhi University, the
Mutiny
Memorial, and more. What are the other areas? And Khooni Darwaza,
yes.
That's another one that we haven't spoken about yet. Now, this is again just stone's throw from Firoz Shah Kotla in a way, and it's today in the middle of a street, right, where you've got Fair
and Bahadur Shah Zafar Marg, it's on that,
But checkered history and a lot of really sad stories around that monument.
Very, very sad stories. I mean, its name, Khooni Darwaza, right? It already strikes you. You wonder, why is it so bloody? And yes, it's interesting because it's very unassuming. If you pass by, you may miss it. It's covered by also a lot of trees, literally in the middle of the Bahadur Shah Zafar Road.
Right.
On one side is the college, Maulana Azad, and then on the other end is Firoz Shah Kotla.
Right.
Khooni Darwaza has a checkered history, because there was a lot of debate about who made this gateway in the first place and what
Right.
was its purpose.
Right.
So, for again a basic background into the gates of Delhi, we talk about Ajmeri Gate and Delhi Gate and Kashmiri Gate, but
Correct.
what do these gates mean? Why are there so many gates?
Yeah.
When Shah Jahan built his walled city of Shah
Correct.
Jahanabad,
Correct.
it was walled, but you needed gates in directions, right?
Of course.
So all of these gates got the names after the direction. Delhi Gate, however, it was changed much later. I think it was called the Akbarabadi Gate in its own time. So you have gates of Delhi, but this particular gate was not a Shah Jahani, curation.
Gates prior, most likely.
It's before. It's
Mhm.
actually, it goes back to the time of Sher Shah Suri, who had defeated Humayun the first time around,
Right.
when the Afghans had come into the picture, and in that interim they were ruling Delhi.
Right.
So when you go to Humayun's tomb, you see Isa Khan's tomb, and you see some of those Afghani looking
Correct.
structures. They come during the 1500s, when you have this takeover happen. It's around that time that we think this gate came up. Its actual name is Lal Darwaza. It's the Red Gate. What ends up happening is that this gate is positioned in such a way that it's in its heyday is, of course, near Firoz Shah Kotla, which is one of these premier cities, right?
Right.
And abandoned after new cities came up. Then you have the Purana Killa nearby. You go a little ahead, you have Humayun's tomb.
Right.
And then in front of this gate, at some point in the 1800s, in the 1850s, the jail came up where the college now stands.
Okay. Okay.
So it's positioned over there.
Mhm.
The only story that we know most likely happened is of Bahadur Shah Zafar's sons. And most likely it did happen. We know for a fact
They were massacred
that
there. Yeah.
the sons and grandson of Bahadur Shah Zafar was shot
Right.
with a Colt revolver at the end of the uprising.
Right.
Bahadur Shah Zafar was hiding with his family in Humayun's tomb, and he was given a promise of life, but by Hudson. But it was not extended to his sons and grandsons. So when they were moving on carts from Humayun's tomb, you can imagine, if you look at the map, it's also in the book,
Right.
I trace it, that
Yeah.
they would be moving from Humayun's tomb, they would cross the Purana Killa, and they would come near the Khooni Darwaza, because near that is where the Delhi Gate is today.
Right.
Delhi Gate was the entrance for Shah Jahanabad,
Yeah.
and they were taking them to Shah Jahanabad again. So they would have reached Khooni Darwaza, and in that vicinity, the British record says that they felt that there was going to be another commotion. There was going to be these princes were going to evade, escape, or kill us. So in that second, they decided to get those princes out. They stripped them down and they shot them dead in front or in this vicinity. Now we know that happened.
Right.
This marg now is called Bahadur Shah Zafar Marg, after the sons and grandson of the man who were assassinated.
Right.
But the other two stories of Dara Shikoh and Abdur Rahim Khani Khan's sons are the ones I question, because they say that apart from the ghosts of Bahadur Shah Zafar's family, you also have Dara Shikoh, that very, very popular prince in our imagination that has taken so many hours of debates on news channels. Roads have been changed from Aurangzeb Road to different names.
Correct.
Libraries are built in Dara Shikoh's name. And yes, Dara Shikoh was an exemplary figure.
Mhm.
But this question of what if Dara had become the emperor and not Aurangzeb is something that haunts us more than the ghosts. So the story of Aurangzeb defeating Dara, which we know happened.
Right.
Then Aurangzeb beheading Dara, which we also know happened.
Correct.
After that, this legend, which there was a news documentary also on, that his head was taken and hung on Khooni Darwaza for people as a warning. This is highly unlikely because every record from that time says something entirely different.
Which is?
So you have Italian records. You have this man called Manushi who says that the head was sent on a platter to Shah Jahan in Agra and it masqueraded as food. And then when Shah Jahan opened the platter, he saw his son's head there and he broke his teeth on the slab. Then you have stories about how we do know most of the accounts say that before he was beheaded, him and his son were paraded in Delhi in rags on an elephant. We know that for a fact. But each record has something different to say, including one in which it says that the head was brought to Aurangzeb and Aurangzeb said that I did not want to see his face when he was alive, so I would not like for it. I wouldn't want to see it now. Then there are stories of how the head was put back onto the body and then he was buried. Another question then was, where is he buried? Because till today, the grave of Dara is a mystery as much as what happened with his head.
Right.
So my investigation was, and as I said, some of the ghosts of Delhi don't have a business being there. I think Khooni Darwaza got this reputation because we know of a very gory incident that happened over here in the 1850s when that gate became very relevant because of its geographical location.
Sure.
Before that, in the period of Abdur Rahim Khani Khana, who we know as the man from Rahim Ke Dohe,
Right.
and Dara Shikoh and Aurangzeb,
Right.
I don't see much reason for that gate having to do anything with them and their ghosts.
Got that. And you also write in the book that there are times that you visited some of these places and you've almost, felt, I mean, the word would be like a residual impact, where you said you would wake up and, and you'd kind of had
Dreams.
nightmares.
Yes.
Some of you just felt really heavy. Do you want to tell the viewers and listeners about that as well?
It's odd because I do think your mind, it's not even a thought, it's a fact. Your mind has the power to shape a lot and to shape shift reality. And the first time when I saw the tomb of Jamali-Kamali, when it was opened,
Right.
I wanted for it to be immediately be closed. And, it's my friends till this date say that it's so bizarre because you are one person who's obsessed with Jamali-Kamali and you got the opportunity to see it, but you wanted it. Said I felt like I was trespassing. Like I thought into the other, not trespassing, but it felt that some peace was being disturbed over there. It was not supernatural. It was not a ghostly presence. It was very peaceful. And I did not want to be an intruder to that peace,
Right.
These locked marble graves.
Yeah.
But after Jamali-Kamali, there have been incidents where I've had, not nightmares, it's always been afternoon. So I could come back from a heritage walk and I would go for a nap and I would wake up with, I would lucid dream almost. I would have these very odd, bizarre dreams. And one of the things when you're in this state and you don't realize you're dreaming, actually, you think you've woken up. So the dream would be that you wake up and you get out of your bed and you're going on about your life. So you think you are awake, but then you look at the clock and the time isn't time. It's, it'll be alphabets or it'll be something and you're like, oh, wait. You're in a dreamlike state. That's happened to me. Malcha Mahal, for example, is another monument that I'll tell you the story of soon. When I came back from walks, I went on an official horror tour over there, which was done by the Delhi Tourism Department. I went for 2 of them. And each time while coming back, people were very afraid. Even though we went with great, gusto and with great excitement and we thought, well, no ghost would bother us. By the time we were there and it started to get dark and you could hear the bats and the monkeys and you had to go through a forest to exit, everybody, the rational and the seeker, was a bit afraid. And I, of course, have stories in the book of people who have been at these sites, like Taha, who's done photographs of Firoz Shah Kotla, who was also plagued by dreams and at times felt a sense of heaviness. But a lot of times, I think the horrors that I confront are also ones that I think are rooted in historical incidents. So I get very emotional sometimes talking about some of these monuments, because you realize that the horrors stem from the partition, Delhi, this partition story, and how these monuments became a space for refuge, including Firoz Shah Kotla, including Humayun's tomb. You think about that and you think about how deeply wounded this city is. When the uprising happened much before, and how Bahadur Shah Zafar, the only thing that this man wanted was to be buried in this city, much like Jamali. He couldn't even get that, he couldn't get that zameen that he wanted. And then you think of Firoz Shah Kotla again, you think that the reason people started going there is because they gave up on administrative structures during the emergency. So those are those really real horrors that sometimes weigh heavy on me.
Yeah, I get that. And it's interesting, like a couple of weeks ago, I was golfing with someone and, we were on this course where there are a lot of buildings, which, of course, there was a lot of dispute and, possession didn't happen for decades. And I was just telling this guy that, this building, has apartments now that are available at a discount. And he's like, I would never buy here. And I was like, why? He's like, because can you imagine how many people, paid EMIs without getting possession? Kitni baddu'a lagi hogi idhar. Unme se kitne log hain jo mar bhi gaye honge. So he says, they would have probably, gone ahead and cursed, this builder and this place. And he says, hence, I would never, no matter all the money or whatever discount you're giving, he said, I would never buy into this place just because of the misfortune. And like you mentioned, that, so many of these sites have, there's death, there's treachery, there's everything that, you don't want to be associated with. And so maybe some of that lives on as well.
Yeah.
Agreed. Malcha Mahal, right? And this is, of course, a place that now people, again, don't have, easy access to.
Yeah.
Fairly protected, but talk us through that story as well. Like, what is the history behind that one? Because that's one that a lot of people wouldn't know about.
Yes. So Malcha Mahal again, and I write about this in the book, that wherever there is a ghost in Delhi, Firoz Shah Tughlaq is looming behind, because this is another hunting lodge that Firoz Shah Tughlaq built.
Okay.
And Shikarga, right? It's for Shikar. And it's located in the Central Ridge Forest of Delhi, which is in a very premier part of the city now. It's literally in front of Chanakya Puri's, the Malcha Mahal.
Right.
And in the 1980s, a woman comes to the New Delhi railway station and she says that I'm the Queen of Awadh. And she draws her ancestry to Begum Hazrat Mahal, the wife of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah, who pretty much took on the mantle of 1857.
Okay.
And she says that my house has been burnt. This house was given to me by Nehru, and I need a house that befits me. I am royal, and my two children, Prince Ali and Princess Sakina, and my multiple dogs, and my silver trays and my carpets and my shawls and my saris, they all need to find a place. So she comes to Delhi and she establishes herself in the VIP room of the New Delhi railway station and she demands a house. It obviously startles the government. And at that time, it's Indira Gandhi, who's the prime minister. And this story grabs eyeballs from international journalists. This is a story that plays into the trope of exotic India, right?
Right.
It's that whole story of India being a land of elephants and rope tricks and snake charmers.
Right.
So they come to the railway station, and one of the sources of income for this family also becomes the international journalist. So she would only speak to them, and she would have rules, right? Like only speak to me when the moon, I think, wanes or waxes, and it was dramatized also. I believe a lot of this was exoticized. A lot of things I'm sure they weren't doing. Like, I don't think she would just stand eerily in front of trains in the night while they went past and a sari flew by. I think those are very dramatic accounts. But yes, if you see pictures of this woman, there is a sense of assertiveness and authority that she commands naturally.
Right.
You can see also a sense of perhaps deluded, but a belief that she was indeed royal. And then they stay at this railway station.
And how long were they at the railway station for?
For about 10 years. They just stayed there.
I had no idea it was that long. I thought it was like a few months.
No,
10 years.
They stayed for years. And then finally, the Indira Gandhi government says that you can take this hunting lodge in the middle of this forest. She had rejected houses after houses, saying that this doesn't befit me, this doesn't befit me. And she was actually demanding places in Lucknow. But a lot of those had been converted into centers and libraries and so on and so forth, right? And also, if you look at the story, and it's actually this recent book, House of Awadh, who these two researchers and authors who had been doing work on this for a very long time, they said that, there are so many families claiming to be royals, especially Lucknowi Awadhi royalty. It's very difficult to determine. So they couldn't be given anything in Lucknow. Finally, they accept it. They accept this windowless, doorless hunting lodge in the middle of a forest. They move into it. They put out a little slab that says House of Awadh, trespassers will be shot. And they start living over there. And then you have people who, if they want to talk to this family and seek audience, they would go with a letter, and their help would come outside of this lodge, and they would come out with a tray, and you would have to put your letter in a tray, and then you would get an appointment, like, you can come next year, much like the queen of any royalty.
Right.
Then the legend of her crushing diamonds and swallowing them and passing away, that persisted. And R.V. Smith, who was a very, very beloved chronicler of Delhi, went around on his cycle collecting stories, and he used to write a column, I think, for the Hindu, in which he said that if you ask a guard what happened to this woman, they would say Hira chaat liya. Basically, she ate a diamond. And then her daughter, Princess Sakina, passes away. And finally, much later, it's when Prince Ali or Mickey, he passes away. And then shortly after, you have the New York Times doing a huge report on them, which said that they were not royalty. This was a family traumatized by partition. And that's a story that I think you could read my book or New York Times to know more. However, this monument then, with all of this family's treasures and, carpets, for the few months that was abandoned, and nobody took ownership of it immediately, Intact persisted, ASI to do it, nothing happened. We know that people started to go inside this monument, and they started to take away a lot of material that was kept over there. The carpets, the precious ornaments, and so on and so forth. Then it was abandoned. I finally went on a wintry December in 2021, at the end of 2021, yes. Right. It was very eerie. There was a fridge outside that I think they used as their closet. Inside, you had tally marks on the walls. You had Kashmir Ghost written on one of the arches. And you had a residue of a bonfire. So clearly somebody had come a night before, or a few days, friends would have come to this jungle. Right. Then in 2023, this became a spot for ghost tourism, when the Delhi Tourism Department took us on 2 horror tours. And that's the experience I tell in my book, that, what were the ghosts that we were finding? We didn't know, but we knew that this had to do with the family. And then it got, it's closed off for the public now. So it's a fascinating, sad, tragic story.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a bit of a rapid fire. Okay. And of course, at the end of the rapid fire, or the end of the podcast, there's definitely a goodie bag that's coming your way. Okay. Well. So let's and we take a bit of pop culture as well as history, and a little and of course you're doing so much. And we'd love to talk more about Itihaasology and your Insta page and all of that stuff. Because I think there's some great content there, and you have a massive following and a lot of engagement there as well. So if we talk about Instagram and history, okay, so one historical figure would probably be a massive influencer today. Who do you think that might be?
Jamali. Okay. My bias speaks for me, I think, but yeah. Jamali or Humayun. Yeah.
Okay, nice. One historical figure that you'd like to invite to your podcast?
Firoz Shah Tughlaq.
Okay. And one question that you'd end up asking him?
Do you know all your monuments are haunted? What do you feel about that?
One Indian king or queen whose biopic deserves a remake.
Deserves a remake?
Something that's been created on someone and you're like, dude, that was just not okay.
I wouldn't do that, but I think Razia Sultan deserves a nuance story for her. I think she requires a bit more nuance and a bit more love.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. We haven't actually... Is it Himalani who did Razia Sultan once? I mean, in the past. I mean, I forgot.
I don't want to offend anyone. Maybe it was great, but I
Yeah.
think she deserves a bit more love.
Right. Yeah. One empire that collapsed because of a PR failure.
A PR failure. I think it would be. It can't be Ashoka's. It didn't fall. I do think perhaps Wajid Ali Shah's. Of course, 1857 played a role in it.
Right.
But I do think that the entire story of his alcoholism and love for everything that was not administrative led to downfall.
Yeah. And if Instagram existed during the freedom struggle, who would probably end up going viral first?
Gandhi, I believe. Yeah.
Possibly, yeah. If there was a historical moment that you'd want live tweeted or live streamed, which one would that be?
The construction of the Taj Mahal, because it would put an end to all of this debate that we are seeing everywhere. So I do think that would help.
Yeah. Who make better storytellers today, filmmakers or historians?
God, my bias will speak for me. Historians who do filmmaking.
Okay. Yeah, that's diplomatic.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. One modern habit that ancient India would find weird.
That we are not as clean as the Harappans were, as we are told. They would find it weird that we are not able to, especially if they came to Gurgaon and Delhi, and they would see what our drains are doing to us. So, yeah.
Interesting. And one ancient practice that we could probably bring back?
Well, the drains of Harappa.
Yeah, spoken like a true Gurgaon-wala. We probably got stuck in.
Yeah, I had to
traffic on a
leave.
train.
Yeah, I had to leave. I had to leave yesterday to reach today.
Sure that. What do you think, Bollywood? Does it get history mostly right or somewhat wrong?
Mostly wrong.
Yeah. And one era that OTT platforms could actually delve more into and explore more.
The Harappan civilization with a lot of more nuance. It deserves so much more love.
कुछ भी नहीं है उसके बारे में तो देखा जाए.
And जो है, it's very mystical and a bit less historical and more fairy tale-ish. I think like the other ancient civilizations get so much screen time and nuance screen time. Egypt and Mesopotamia, Harappa deserves it too.
Yeah. Why do you think that's the case though?
Well, we do not know much because all of it is based on archaeology. So we haven't been able to decipher the script because that's one big problem. But I still think there can be a lot done with just what we know.
Right. One historical film that you loved, even if it had inaccuracies, but you just loved it. Which one would that be?
Ashoka, because of the cast. Yeah.
I actually haven't seen it. But
Right.
Yeah. And one myth cinema keeps repeating.
That Shah Jahan didn't build the Taj Mahal.
Interesting.
It's a myth that the question was a myth that they keep repeating, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about some now, maybe another 4 or 5 from the perspective of, today. And when you look at attention spans, okay, so attention span today, is it a curse or opportunity?
I would say it is a curse depending on what you do. For me, it shifts. It's an opportunity when I'm on Instagram. It's a curse when I'm writing a book.
Yeah. Are you really seeing, a lot of youth pick up books and reading as much as they would perhaps, maybe 10, 12, 15 years ago as well?
Fortunately, I think we are again going back into an era of books. There has been a self-awareness of brain rot.
Right.
And I've seen people, my generation, younger to me, also now feeling a sense of exhaustion with the phone. And I do think picking up books is in again.
Yeah.
It's fetch.
So you're doing a lot of posting on Instagram. So the comment section, is it research goldmine or chaos?
Both. I get a lot of curious questions. I get a lot of love. I also get a lot of funny slurs, which I make a little sort of screenshotted, documentation of.
Yeah.
But it's a mix.
Yeah. You end up deleting a lot of comments, or you keep them there?
I keep everything that's over there. I, as a historian, I delete very little. Every archive matters.
Love that. Yeah. Short form content, is it helping or hurting, especially when it comes to depth and just diving deeper into subjects?
I think short form content can be important to lure you in and to create curiosity towards long form content. And I think my work on Instagram has to be seen as an extension of my long form content. I can bring you in through a 3-second reel, but I will put you down a rabbit hole that will make you read a 600-page book. So
Yeah, awesome. And one reel that you're really proud of, and it wasn't maybe about the views, but it's just about maybe some of the engagement that happened in it.
Upinder Singh has written this very interesting book, which is a Bible for history students, a history of ancient early medieval India. It's a 3-second long reel, which has got more than 3 million views. All I do is look at the camera very dramatically and just say, if you want to start somewhere, start here. And I pick up the book, and it caused quite the rage. So I think it's that.
Yeah,
I get called Snape a lot on comments. That is recurrent, and I do keep those comments. Sometimes I even pin them. Yeah.
All right. And your next book, okay, what would that be potentially on?
I actually already know it is going to be on romantic and erotic Indian art. So I'm looking at paintings and sculptures and just a range of visuals from ancient all the way to, I suppose, the 19th century. And I'm doing a book on art now.
Interesting.
Yes.
Wow. So it's not necessarily a sequel to Ghosted.
There will be a sequel, but I don't think immediately. Yes.
Okay, I love that. And of course, too early to ask, but if we are talking about 20, 25, 30 years down the line, what would you like to most be remembered for?
That I didn't think any story is small. And I hope that our work shows that each story, all of you and everything that you bring out matters. And we celebrate that.
Awesome. Super. Love that. Yeah. So that was our rapid fire.
Thank you. Lovely. That was amazing.
One of your pieces on Instagram which really got my attention, and since we were talking about the Qutub Minar recently, there was something that you put out on Ghalib at the Qutub Minar. Do you want to, speak that out for our viewers and listeners?
It's for anybody who is a Dilli wala, I think this would resonate with them. So we were doing Simar Manotra Ring Pot, did Songs of the Stone, and they invited Mehrauli Niazi to do a performance on the sitar, and they asked me to open this evening for them. And the Qutub Minar was behind me. It was surreal to be at the Qutub Minar at that time. And the only thing that came to my mind were the words that have been attributed to Ghalib, in which he says ki, एक रोज अपनी रूह से पूछा कि दिल्ली क्या है, तो जवाब में कह गई कि दुनिया मानो जिस्म और दिल्ली उसकी जान. One evening I asked my soul, what is Delhi? And the world is the body and Delhi is its soul. And I think anybody who's a Dilli wala would relate with this.
100%. Right? And Dilli walas are never leaving Delhi. No
matter what happens. I mean,
it could be like 1,000.
It's one of those things. I feel like it's a toxic, we are the toxic lovers in this case because we have wounded the city. So I think we blame Delhi a lot, and we don't talk about how we haunt it, but we haunt it in ways worse than it haunts us.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Totally relate. I love how you're putting the content, out there. And I think it's, like you said, it might be a short reel, which could be 30 seconds, but you'll suck someone in to, really go in depth into that content as well. What's really happening at Itihaasology? What are you guys doing there? And you're growing your team. There's walks happening and there's tours and everything else. So tell us about that as well.
Well, again, I started with telling you how it began. Right. And over the years, we realized that it had to be on ground as well. So it began obviously as a repository, and it began at a time when Instagram wasn't doing videos. I mean, Instagram used to be, for people who have come to Instagram recently, there were days when it was a photo app and you went to post photos on it. Now it's just reels. It started in the day where you could post a photo and it would work. Then the pandemic came, and that's when the reels fever took over. That's when we also shifted to reel content. And then in the last 2-3 years, it's really been a mix of reels, informative content, heritage walks. We do a journal, which is a journal that bridges the gap between established academics and aspiring academics from across the world. Each year, we do this completely free for everybody to access. It's digital. We've been doing musicals recently. And one of the things that's been difficult for me is to describe to people what my job is, which is also great, because I would sit with somebody and they would ask me, so what do you do? And I'll tell them all of this. And they're like, no, but what do you do? And it's so difficult for people to imagine that you can do this. So Itihaasology currently is, I believe, and this was not me, it was one of the scholars who reviewed our journal and said it's a way of looking at history. And what we are trying to do at Itihaasology is we're trying to say that there is a historical way in which you can view the world, a historical lens. That lens involves an artistic viewing of the world, a cultural viewing of the world, knowing your own place in it, and understanding where it all began. Our core is that you have to look behind, you have to look back to carve a way forward. And I think that's the underlying philosophy. So there will never be a definition to Itihaasology. The logo of Itihaasology is the dancing girl from the Indus Valley civilization. And we know for a fact that Indus Valley civilization remains an enigma. As much as popular as it is, it will always make you question and it will always make you curious. And that is what I think we embody there, that we want to remain a portal of historical curiosity that is ever expanding.
So very fluid, and you're just going to go with the flow and see where
you go with the flow. And you, whether it's a heritage walk on day one or a musical on day two, I think one thing I've realized is that history is a repository of stories, and you can perform a story in any way as long as it's done with nuance and respect and sensitivity. And that's what we do.
Adjectives that are missing in the world today.
Well, totally.
So and where can people find Itihaasology? How can they follow it, apart from Instagram, of course? When events are being curated, is there a place that you're broadcasting, etc.? Where does all that happen?
So of course, as you said, Instagram is the main place to be. We are most active over there, but we do also have a website, itihaasology.com, where you get updates. You can sign up to our newsletter, be a part of our WhatsApp community. We have a broadcasting community over there. And apart from that, we also have a podcast, which, well, we haven't filmed in for a long time. It's called the For Old Time's Sake podcast, where Kudrat Singh and I, who, Itihaasology is incomplete without Kudrat, who I met in college, and she joined in the team. We do this podcast together where, again, the idea was that we get so many questions on Instagram about, literally, to tell us about Gandhara or tell us about museums and monuments and curation. And I think the podcast allowed us, as we find out, even when I'm doing this, this kind of long form conversation, that kind of nuance can come through mediums like these. So we do also have that. So those are all the places you can find Itihaasology at.
Awesome. Love it. So definitely do go ahead and follow the page, and of course subscribe to the WhatsApp group. And so when you're doing these walks, are you still doing some like ghosted walks and stuff?
Yes, the plan. So very interestingly, we announced Ghosted in front of Jamali-Kamali on Halloween. So we did a special Halloween heritage walk on 31st October. We got more than 100 signups, so we had to stop, and we will do a rerun of it in January. So we got people to Mehrauli. I took the book. My entire team, again, I mean, Kudrat's there. You have Rohan, Amir, Minhal, Sara, Ishwari, Anika, all of these people. We all decided that we are going to take a velvet purple shawl, which matches the cover of the book. And we're going to reveal it in the middle of the walk, that a book is coming out. The idea was that all my work has been for the public. Everything is a result of my conversations, my ideating, my meeting with people. And they have the first take in everything I do. And so I said that I do not want to begin with an exclusive book launch.
Wine and cheese.
Which also happened later. But the first thing had to be a public launch. So we got people to Jamali-Kamali. And in the middle of my tour, I revealed the book. And that gave us the idea that why don't we go to each monument in the book, barring Malcha Mahal, and take people on tours. And so we'll be doing that from Jan till March when, the weather is a bit better.
I'm sure many would love to come on that. And I'd sign up for that.
Yeah, please. I'm looking forward to you being there and hoping to hug the iron pillar if you go that side.
For sure. And and I'm just wondering, in terms of when you on these walks, have you ever had any dramatic instances where people have felt possessed or overreacted or anything like that as well?
No, because I also am very wary of saying that, my work, neither am I a harbinger of scientific rationality, nor am I a ghostbuster or a paranormal investigator, right? I am very clear with the fact that I'm a historian. So one of the things that I do is we never say these are horror too. I mean, we haven't even done one yet, right? We will be doing them based on the book. But never is it that where we are going is a supposedly haunted place or we are going seeking ghosts. I always seek history. The book is called Ghosted for two reasons. One is, of course, because it works for a generation like ours where they would think the book is about something entirely different. But also ghosted because if you look at the literal meaning of the word, there are certain histories that get ghosted in the process of the ghosts coming to that monument, which is what I also want to discover. So when I take people to these walks with me, I want them to see that, yes, there is a ghost story, there is a jinn, there is a witch, but why? There's a historical reason. So those walks are for there. But these possessions, I have witnessed people saying that they're possessed at Firoz Shah Kotla on a Thursday. Again, some of that is in my book.
Yeah. And I get that because I remember one time I had the Palga Rinpoche on the podcast, and the Rinpoche is basically someone who does perform exorcisms, and all of that. And this one lady would just keep calling me and say, "I need his phone number. I need his phone number. I need his phone number." I said, "I cannot give you his phone number." She's like, "But I'm possessed, and this ghost is gonna kill me if I don't do anything." And I'm like, "Listen, the least or the best I can do is I can put you on to the person who connected us, who is a common friend, and maybe she can reach out to him and see if there is a connection." But people take it very seriously, possessions and being possessed and all of that as well.
And it is, I mean, again, for me, when people still ask me if I believe in ghosts, I say I don't know enough. It's the same belief I would extend to somebody talking about God. These are certain things that I think are very personal to people. Whether that possession can be located medically or supernaturally, I'm neither a specialist. I'm in either of those fields, right? So for me, I'm very clear that I will never disrespect somebody's. I'm nobody to do that. None of us should think of ourselves in a position where we can say, well, what you are saying is hocus pocus or it's completely bogus. Everybody has a reason to feel a certain way. And I hope that they get the help and the means that they require. For me, if you still ask me if I've seen a ghost or if I've seen God, I would say I don't know enough. I don't know.
Yeah. I love it. And I think that's, a great note to end the podcast on. And I just love how, you kept it, real. Like there was the science, behind it. There was, you kept it authentic as well. You're not trying to over dramatize something. And, when you go abroad a lot, you've got, tours that are, running around
in costumes
and then, there'll be people who'll be like, okay, we're going to take you to the place where this Texas chainsaw massacre happened, or and around Niagara there'll be something else. I remember as a kid going to Niagara Falls and they're like, we're going to take you to the haunted monuments of Niagara Falls and all of that. So so I just love how you're keeping it real. I think that's really what the world needs today as well.
Exactly, because we forget that these were real incidents and real people, right? So we need to give them also. I think with history sometimes we get a bit distant and we can exoticize a tragedy, but it was a tragedy nonetheless. Doesn't matter if it's old.
Agreed. Yeah, love that. We also had, of course, some goodies for you. Thanks to the rapid fire that you did, and, all of that. So
thank you.
Just some giveaways. This is something from House Shantru and Nikhil.
How lovely! I love Shantru and Nikhil. So this is lovely. Thank you.
That Nikhil had created. Also for your
that's lovely.
Your writing pursuits. There is also a pen that we have.
Thank you. That always helps.
So that's something for you as well. Also, everyone who's been on the podcast, said we created the cards of influence. So this is the first deck. This is the prototype. But I thought it'd be nice, and it has the same color scheme, as.
It does.
Your book as well. And so all the people who've been on it, there've been some interesting, people. And of course, when the second edition happens, we your card,
lovely.
Well.
That's
so
amazing.
That's something that you probably like as well. And a couple of things. One, obviously, you should have the souvenir mug, the same mug that we have here. So we have your
stunning. That's Christmas for me.
3D mug, and also I've recently come out with a new gold planner. So
I love that.
coming, and it's got some interesting stuff, and there's some good templates in there.
I love the color. I
that's
love
some
this.
stuff here as well.
The edges. Amazing. Thank you. This is
Okay.
being filmed near Christmas. So my Christmas is made. Thank you, Gaurav.
And thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate this conversation. And
Likewise.
I know you said you come to Noida once every 10 years.
Every
so
time. This was my, now I will disappear like Pennywise in it and return 10 years later.
love it. Thank you so very much.
Thank
It was a
you.
pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, let us know what you thought. Definitely, again, like I said, go out and buy the book. Eric's been out there doing some amazing work in terms of promoting it. I think he's done an amazing amount of work in terms of writing this. I'm sure it's many, many years of hard work and labor that went in, and you can truly, feel it. History buff or not, ghost believer or not. I think this is one book that really resonate with you, and I really hope that you will go out there and buy it.